I was lying in intensive care. A heart attack had nearly killed me when my daughter called. "Tomorrow is your son-in-law's birthday. Come and help with the preparations," I whispered. "I can't. I'm not feeling well." She yelled, "Then don't you dare come home." I hung up and blocked her number. A week later, I was discharged. I returned home and turned their lives into a nightmare. Betraying my family awakened a sense of justice they didn't expect. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps. I stared at the acoustic ceiling tiles in the ICU, counting the tiny holes, anything to distract from the wires snaking across my chest and the steady beep of the heart monitor. 3 days had passed since my world tilted sideways on that roof. My phone vibrated on the metal tray beside me. Jennifer's name flashed across the screen. "Dad?" Her voice was tight, impatient, not the tone you'd expect when calling your father in intensive care. "Tomorrow's Brian's birthday party. We need you to come help with the setup." I shifted against the starched hospital sheets, wincing as pain shot through my chest. "Honey, I can't. I'm still at Providence. The doctors say—" "What do you mean you can't?" Her voice climbed an octave. "We've got 40 people coming. The caterer needs directions, the tent company is asking questions, and Brian's mother expects everything perfect." Through the phone, I heard Brian in the background. "Tell him we need the good chairs from the garage." My hand trembled slightly as I gripped the phone tighter. The heart monitor's beeping quickened. "Jennifer, I had a heart attack. I'm in the cardiac unit. They're running more tests tomorrow morning." Silence. Then, "You're always making excuses when we need you. Always." The words hit harder than any physical pain. I thought about last month, how I'd spent $1,200 on that Italian espresso machine she insisted Brian needed for his coffee consultation business. The business that lasted exactly 3 weeks. "I'm not making excuses," I said quietly. "I'm lying in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm." "Fine." Her voice turned to ice. "Then don't bother coming home at all. We don't need someone who can't be there when family needs them." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, at the photo of Jennifer that still showed her at 16, braces gleaming, holding her first-place science fair trophy. That girl wouldn't have hung up on me. That girl had cried when I drove her to college, made me promise to call every Sunday. My finger hovered over her contact. Then I pressed block. The nurse came in for evening rounds, a kind woman named Patricia, who reminded me of my old secretary at City Hall. She checked my vitals, adjusted my medication drip. "Everything okay, Mr. Bishop? Your heart rate spiked a few minutes ago." "Just family drama," I said, forcing a smile. "Nothing life-threatening." She patted my shoulder. "Family can be the most stressful thing sometimes. You focus on getting better." After she left, I lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the hospital, distant footsteps, muffled conversations, the whoosh of the ventilation system. My mind drifted back, trying to pinpoint when everything changed. 3 years ago, Jennifer and Brian had shown up at my house on S.E. Ankeny Street with 17 boxes and sheepish smiles. "Just until we get back on our feet, Dad. 6 months, tops." I'd helped them unload their furniture, cleared out my workshop to make room for Brian's gym equipment. I'd been happy for the company, honestly. The house felt too big after retirement. 6 months became a year, then 2, then 3. I'd paid off her credit card debt, $15,000 she'd racked up on what she called essential purchases. I'd bought Brian that espresso machine, the professional photography equipment for his lifestyle brand, the standing desk for his consulting firm. Each venture lasted weeks before he discovered it wasn't his passion. Last fall, I'd spent 2 months renovating the bathroom because Jennifer said the tiles were dated. Cost me $8,000. She'd picked out everything: the rainfall showerhead, the heated floors, the Italian marble. When I finished, she'd barely looked up from her phone. "Thanks, Dad. Brian says we still need to replace the vanity, though." The overhead lights dimmed for the night shift. I reached for the call button, adjusting my bed to a more comfortable position. My chest ached, but it was a distant thing compared to the hollow. Feelings spreading through my ribs. 35 years I'd worked for Portland's urban planning department. Started as a junior analyst, worked my way up to senior planner. I'd helped preserve 14 historic buildings in the Pearl District. I'd redesigned the traffic flow in Laurelhurst to reduce accidents by 40%. 3 mayors had signed commendations with my name on them, but to my daughter, I was just the man who couldn't help set up a birthday party. I thought about my house, the craftsman-style home I'd bought in 1998 for $280,000. Now it was worth over $650,000. I'd maintained it meticulously, replaced the roof 5 years ago, updated the electrical system, refinished the hardwood floors myself. It was in my name. Everything was in my name. Through the window, I could see the lights of downtown Portland twinkling in the distance. Somewhere out there, Jennifer and Brian were probably setting up for tomorrow's party, annoyed at my inconvenient medical emergency. I picked up my phone again, opened my contacts. Clarence Adams lived next door. We'd worked together at the city for 20 years before he'd left to practice real estate law. I typed out a message. Got time for a visit? Need some advice on property law. His response came quickly. Visiting hours tomorrow, 2-6. I'll bring coffee. The good stuff, not hospital sludge. I smiled for the first time that day, a real smile. The heart monitor beeped its steady rhythm. The IV dripped. Outside, the night shift nurses laughed about something at their station. Life continued, indifferent to my small crisis. But something had shifted. Some essential rope that had been holding me in place had snapped cleanly. I felt lighter, clearer. 7 more days in the hospital, the doctors said. 7 days to rest, recover, and think very carefully about what came next. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I planned. Clarence arrived the next afternoon carrying 2 paper cups from Stumptown Coffee on Division. He settled into the vinyl visitor's chair, his reading glasses perched on his nose like they always were. You look terrible, he said, handing me the cup. Heart attack will do that. I took a sip. The coffee was perfect. Strong, no sugar. Exactly how I'd drunk it for 40 years. Thanks for coming. He waved a hand dismissively. Please, we survived 15 budget meetings together. This is nothing. His expression turned serious. So what happened? Jennifer said you had a minor episode when I saw her at New Seasons last week. She said what? Yeah, I ran into her and Brian at the grocery store. They were loading up on expensive cuts of meat, bottles of wine, premium stuff. Said they were planning a celebration. He paused. That was 4 days before your heart attack, Vernon. The beeping on my monitor picked up tempo. I forced myself to breathe slowly, deliberately. They knew I was sick. I'd told Jennifer I wasn't feeling well that whole week. Clarence's jaw tightened. The party was tomorrow, right? That's what she mentioned? Tomorrow. I stared at the pale green walls. While I'm hooked up to machines, they're celebrating. There's something else. Clarence shifted uncomfortably. I didn't want to mention it, but given the situation, 2 weeks ago I saw them returning from somewhere. Tanned, happy. Brian was pulling designer luggage from a taxi. They went on vacation? Looked like it. I asked Jennifer how the trip was, and she got this deer in headlights look. Said it was just a quick weekend thing. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. I checked my Ring camera footage. They were gone for 8 days. The taxi that dropped them off had an airport shuttle company logo. Hawaii, probably. Or Mexico. Somewhere with beaches and umbrella drinks. While I'd been replacing the water heater, they said was making weird noises. A $1,400 fix that the plumber said could have waited another year. I laughed. The sound came out bitter, sharp. Vernon? I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. I set down the coffee cup carefully. Tell me something, Clarence. You still keep up with property law? His eyebrows rose. That's what you wanted to discuss? Among other things. I adjusted the bed, sitting up straighter, despite the protests from my chest. If someone's been living in your house, rent-free, for 3 years, what are your options? Clarence leaned back, processing. In Oregon? You've got several, especially if there's no lease agreement. He pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket. Always the lawyer. You'd file for eviction through the Multnomah County Circuit Court. Without a lease, they're considered tenants at will. You'd need to give them at least 30 days' notice. But given they've been there over a year, it's actually 90 days under Oregon revised statutes. 90.427. 90 days. I rolled the number around in my mind. That's manageable. Vernon, are you seriously considering... What if someone tried to refinance your property without permission, forged signatures on loan documents? His pen stopped moving. That's fraud, federal crime, bank fraud, forgery. We're talking serious charges. He studied my face. Has someone done this? Hypothetically? Hypothetically, that person would be looking at up to 5 years in federal prison. Oregon also has state charges for identity theft and forgery. Class C felony. He set down his notebook. Vernon, what's going on? The door opened. A nurse, different from Patricia, came in to check my vitals. We sat in silence while she worked, updating my chart, asking routine questions about pain levels. When she left, I spoke quietly. I need you to do me a favor. After I'm discharged, I want you to check something. Public records, credit reports if you can access them legally, Jennifer and Brian's financial situation. That's not exactly. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. Just public records, property liens, court filings, that sort of thing. You know how to navigate that world better than I do. Clarence studied me for a long moment. All right. But Vernon, whatever you're thinking, I'm thinking about protecting what's mine. I met his eyes. I'm thinking about 35 years at the planning department, about the pension I earned, about the house I bought with my own money. I'm thinking about being told not to come home while I'm recovering from a heart attack. He nodded slowly. I'll make some calls, see what I can find. After he left, I spent the afternoon watching the ceiling and remembering. Not the recent years. Those hurt too much. I went further back, Jennifer at 7, losing her first tooth during breakfast. How she'd cried because she thought it meant she was broken. I'd sat her down and explained how growing up meant changing, how the new tooth would be stronger. She'd kept that baby tooth in a little box for years. Jennifer at 15, furious because I wouldn't let her go to a concert in Seattle. You don't trust me? You never trust me? 2 weeks later, 3 kids from her school went to that concert and got arrested for drug possession. She'd never apologized, but she'd hugged me tight that Sunday morning. Jennifer at 22, college graduation. I'd given her a check for $5,000, my savings from a year of side consulting work. Start your life right, I'd said. She'd cried, promised to make me proud. Where did that girl go? The days blurred together. Patricia taught me breathing exercises. Dr. Patel explained my medications, beta blockers, blood thinners, cholesterol management. I nodded, asked questions, played the role of compliant patient, but my mind worked overtime. On the 5th day, Clarence returned with a manila folder. You're not going to like this, he said, pulling the chair close. He opened the folder, revealing printouts. Jennifer and Brian have a combined debt load of approximately $239,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. The Lexus is financed for $85,000 at 6.9% interest. Brian has outstanding debts from a failed LLC, something called Parker Consulting Solutions, totaling $120,000. Collection agencies are actively pursuing him. They've got 3 maxed credit cards between them, another $34,000. I processed each number, filing it away. What about income? Jennifer makes $52,000 annually at Powell Marketing Group. Brian, he flipped a page. Brian hasn't reported consistent income in 3 years. Various 1099 forms for freelance work. Nothing substantial. So they're drowning. Worse than that. Clarence pulled out another document. I found a loan application at KeyBank, filed 2 weeks ago. It's a refinancing request for your property on S.E. Ankeny Street. The signatures, he pointed. That's not your signature, Vernon. I've seen your handwriting 1,000 times. There it was. Cold, documented proof. My heart rate stayed steady this time. I felt calm, focused. What's your house worth now? Clarence asked quietly. The county assessment came back at $650,000 last year. He whistled low. That's a lot of equity to steal. That's a lot of motivation to get rid of an inconvenient father, I said. The words tasted like metal. Pull every string you can, Clarence. I want to know everything. Every debt, every failed payment, every legal filing. Can you do that? I can, he hesitated. Vernon, are you sure about this path? Once you start, I'm already on the path. They put me here. I gestured at the hospital room, at the machines keeping me alive. I'm just choosing which direction to walk. After Clarence left, I picked up my phone, scrolled through old photos. Jennifer and Brian's wedding 5 years ago. I'd paid for half of it, $18,000. Just to help us start off right, Dad? Brian had shaken my hand, called me his hero. I deleted the photo. One by one, I went through my gallery. Deleted every image of them. 3 years of memories, erased with steady taps of my thumb. When I finished, only older photos remained. Jennifer as a child, Jennifer in college, Jennifer before Brian, before the debt, before the entitlement. Dr. Patel discharged me on the 7th day. Take it easy, Mr. Bishop. No strenuous activity. Someone picking you up. I'll manage, I said. The Uber driver helped me into his Prius, made small talk about the weather while we drove through morning traffic. Portland looked different somehow, sharper, clearer. We passed the house where I'd worked on the Historic Preservation Committee case in 2003, the coffee shop where I used to grab lunch during budget season. 35 years of my life woven into this city's fabric. The driver turned onto S.E. Ankeny Street. My house came into view, the craftsman-style gem I'd maintained for decades. The yard looked good. Jennifer must have hired someone to mow it, with my money probably. In the driveway sat a vehicle I'd never seen before, a black Lexus RX 350, gleaming in the March sunlight, window sticker still partially visible in the rear window. I smiled. Right here is perfect, I told the driver. As I walked toward my front door, I could see through the window. New furniture in the living room, a massive flat-screen television mounted on the wall. Everything looked expensive, curated, perfect, built on debt and stolen equity. I unlocked the door with my key, stepped inside. Jennifer and Brian were in the kitchen. They turned, faces going pale. Dad, Jennifer said, You're home. Surprise, I said quietly. Hope the party was nice. Jennifer's coffee cup clattered against the granite countertop. Brian stood frozen by the refrigerator, a bottle of craft beer halfway to his lips. The kitchen smelled like expensive takeout, Thai food from that place on Hawthorne that charged $20 for pad Thai. We weren't expecting you, Brian said finally. He set the beer down slowly, like I was a wild animal he didn't want to startle. The hospital said another week at least. They said I could recover at home. I moved carefully into the living room, one hand on my chest. Not entirely an act. My ribs still ached. Figured I'd be more comfortable in my own bed. The furniture hit me again now that I was closer. A sectional sofa in charcoal gray that looked straight out of a West Elm catalog. A coffee table made of reclaimed wood and steel. The massive television had to be 75 inches, maybe more. I did quick math in my head. Probably $12,000 worth of new furniture, minimum. This is different, I said. Oh. Jennifer laughed, but it came out wrong, too high-pitched. Yeah, we did some redecorating. The old stuff was so worn out, you know? We thought you'd like the upgrade. Did you now? She flinched at my tone. Good. Let her squirm. Brian cleared his throat, trying to regain control. We were actually going to surprise you when you got back. Make the place feel fresh, more modern. Investment in the property value, really. I turned to look at him. Really look. He'd put on weight since they moved in. Soft around the middle. The kind of softness that came from not working, from spending days on the couch. He wore a polo shirt with a logo I didn't recognize. Probably cost more than my entire closet. Speaking of investments, I said, that's a nice vehicle outside. Jennifer and Brian exchanged a glance. Quick, nervous. The Lexus? Brian's confidence flickered back, puffing up his chest. Yeah, got a great deal on it. Part of building the right image for my consulting business. Clients expect a certain level of success, you know? Which consulting business is this? The photography one, or the coffee one, or the lifestyle brand? I lowered myself onto their new sofa carefully. Hard to keep track. His face reddened. This is different. Tech consulting. Real money in it. I've got 3 clients lined up already. 3 clients in 3 years would be an improvement, but I didn't say that. Instead, I pulled out my phone, made a show of checking something. Must be doing well, then. That's what, $60,000 for the SUV? 55, Jennifer said quickly. And we financed it, obviously. Everyone finances cars now, Dad. It's smart money management. Smart money management. From a woman who'd maxed out 3 credit cards buying furniture she didn't need, with money she didn't have. I let the silence stretch, watched them fidget. Where's my workshop? I asked, another glance between them. About that, Brian started. We converted it into a home gym. Jennifer's been really committed to her fitness journey, and with my back problems, I needed proper equipment. Your back problems? Yeah, from the accident last year. I didn't remember any accident, but then they'd stopped telling me things around the time they stopped pretending to be grateful. And my bedroom? Your bedroom? Jennifer laughed again, that same nervous pitch. It's still your bedroom, Dad. What are you talking about? I stood slowly, headed for the stairs. They followed me like anxious puppies, and I could hear Brian whispering something to Jennifer. The stairs took effort. My legs felt weak, my chest tight. I wasn't faking that part. My bedroom door stood open. Inside, I found Brian's desk set up. 3 monitors, a fancy gaming chair, cables running everywhere. My bed had been pushed against the wall. Boxes of my belongings were stacked in the corner, like garbage waiting for pickup day. This is temporary, Jennifer said from the doorway. Brian just needed the space for his workstation, and you were in the hospital. So we figured... You figured I wouldn't notice. I picked up one of the boxes. Inside were photo albums, my old city planning awards, personal papers, everything that mattered to me, shoved away like trash. Where exactly was I supposed to sleep? The guest room's all made up for you, Brian said. It's actually nicer, quieter, away from street noise. The guest room, in my own house. I set the box down, turned to face them. Jennifer's eyes were wet, but I couldn't tell if the tears were real or tactical. Brian stood behind her, arms crossed, jaw set. I need to rest, I said quietly. Long day. They practically fled. I stood in what used to be my bedroom and looked at Brian's setup. One of the monitors showed an email inbox. I couldn't read the messages from here, but I could see the senders. Collection agencies, multiple credit card companies, something from the Oregon Department of Revenue. Interesting. The guest room was indeed made up. They'd at least done that much. I unpacked my hospital bag slowly, hanging my shirts in the narrow closet. Through the window, I could see Clarence's house next door. The lights were on in his study. I made a mental note to visit him tomorrow. Over the next week, I played my part perfectly. Weak, recovering, mostly staying in my room. I took my medications at the dining table where they could see. Winced when I moved too fast. Let them think the heart attack had broken something fundamental inside me. Jennifer started making breakfast. Not well, she'd burned the bacon twice, but she tried. Brian asked about my doctor appointments, pretended to care about my cardiac rehab schedule. I watched them, learned their patterns. Brian slept until noon most days. Jennifer left for work at 8:30, returned around 6. They ordered takeout 4 nights out of 5, nothing cheap. When they thought I was napping, they argued. Always about money. We can't afford this, Jennifer hissed one afternoon. I was in my room, door cracked open. The Lexus payment is $1,200 a month, Brian. $1,200? So ask him for help. He's got money. I'm not asking my father for more money. Why not? You've done it before. He always folds. Always folds. The words stung more than my chest pain. He's different since the hospital, Jennifer said. Colder. He's old and sick. Probably feeling sorry for himself. Give it time. He'll come around. I waited until I heard them go out. Some function for Jennifer's marketing firm. Then I went downstairs and looked through the mail they'd left on the counter. Bills, mostly. A notice from KeyBank about their mortgage application. Additional documentation required. The refinancing attempt. Clarence had been right. I photographed everything with my phone. Every bill, every late notice, every credit card statement they'd been careless enough to leave visible. Built my case, piece by piece. That Sunday, Clarence came over for coffee. Brian and Jennifer were at New Seasons doing their weekly grocery run. My money, of course, since they'd forgotten their wallets. You look better, Clarence said, though his eyes said he knew I was performing. Appearances can be deceiving. I poured us both coffee. I'd started buying the expensive beans from Stumptown, leaving the receipts where Jennifer would find them. Let her see what her father could still afford. Did you find a good real estate attorney? Linda Pierce. Works out of the Pearl District. She's expensive, $3.50 an hour, but she's a shark. He pulled out a business card. I told her you might call. I'll set up a meeting. I slid the card into my wallet. What about the refinancing? Bank rejected it last week. Documentation irregularities, they said. Basically, they figured out the signature was forged. He stirred his coffee slowly. That should be the end of it, but Vernon, If you wanted to pursue charges, not yet. I glanced toward the window. The Lexus sat in the driveway, gleaming black paint showing every fingerprint. I want them to understand the full scope of their situation first. Which is? Hopeless, I smiled. 239,000 in debt. Aging father who's supposed to be their safety net, and now their safety net is waking up. Clarence studied my face. You've changed. Near-death experiences have that effect. I heard a car door slam. They were back. You should go. Don't want them thinking we're conspiring, aren't we? We're old friends having coffee, that's all. He left through the back door just as Jennifer and Brian came in the front, arms loaded with Whole Foods bags. Organic this, free range that. Must have been a $300 shopping trip. Dad! Jennifer seemed startled to see me in the kitchen. You're up. Feeling stronger every day, I said. I pulled out my wallet, made a show of checking my bank balance on my phone, made sure the screen was visible. $245,000 in my main checking account. Enough to catch their attention, not enough to show my full hand. Thinking about treating myself, maybe a trip somewhere. Alaska, perhaps. Always wanted to see the glaciers before they melt. Jennifer's eyes locked on that number. I could practically see the calculations running through her head. Alaska sounds amazing, Brian said, suddenly enthusiastic. You know, I've been looking into adventure travel consulting. Growing market. Could give you some recommendations. That's generous. I pocketed my phone. But I prefer planning my own adventures. Always have. I went back upstairs, leaving them with their groceries and their greed. That night, I called Linda Pierce's office and left a message. Then I opened my banking app and did something I'd been planning since the hospital. I created a new will. Everything to the Portland Veterans Foundation. Every dollar, every asset, every last paperclip. Jennifer and Brian would get nothing. I saved the document, emailed it to myself, and printed 3 copies on my home printer. Left one on the kitchen counter where they'd find it in the morning. Then I took my medication, closed my eyes, and slept better than I had in 3 years. The screaming started at 6:30 in the morning. I was already awake, sitting in the guest room with my coffee, when I heard Jennifer's voice crack through the house like a whip. What the hell is this? Brian's response was muffled, but the tone carried panic. I counted to 30 before going downstairs, gave them time to really absorb what they'd found. Jennifer stood in the kitchen holding my will like it was evidence in a murder trial. Her face had gone blotchy red, mascara already smudged from crying. Brian paced behind her, running his hands through his hair repeatedly. Morning, I said, pouring myself a fresh cup. Sleep well? What is this? Jennifer thrust the papers at me. Her hands shook. The Portland Veterans Foundation? You're leaving everything to charity? Yes. Everything? The house, your retirement accounts, all of it? Every penny. I took a sip of coffee. Colombian roast, smooth finish. They do good work. Help soldiers who actually sacrificed for something larger than themselves. Brian stopped pacing. You can't be serious. We're your family. Are you? I met his eyes. Funny. Family usually shows up when someone's in the ICU. Family doesn't tell their father not to come home. Jennifer's tears came faster. I was upset, Dad. I said things I didn't mean. You know how I get when I'm stressed. I know exactly how you get. I leaned against the counter, relaxed, casual. Inside, I was watching every micro-expression, every tell. You get stressed about money, about maintaining appearances, about keeping up with everyone else who's actually earning what they spend. That's not fair, she said. Neither is forging someone's signature on a refinancing application. The silence that followed could have cracked concrete. Jennifer's mouth opened, closed. Brian went pale, then flushed, then pale again. Quite the colorful display. I don't know what you're talking about, Brian said, but his voice cracked on the last word. KeyBank flagged your application. Documentation irregularities. I pulled out my phone, showed them the photograph I'd taken of the bank notice. Turns out banks are pretty good at detecting forgery. Who knew? Jennifer sank into a chair. Dad, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you tried to steal my house? How you've been bleeding me dry for 3 years? I set my coffee down carefully. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get jobs, real ones. You're going to pay your own bills, and you're going to start looking for somewhere else to live. You're kicking us out? Jennifer's voice climbed to a register I hadn't heard since she was 13. We have nowhere to go. Should have thought about that before treating me like an ATM with a heartbeat. Brian stepped forward, jaw tight. You're being unreasonable. We made one mistake. One? I laughed. It came out cold, sharp. Let's count, shall we? The $15,000 in credit card debt I paid off. The $8,000 espresso machine for your coffee business that lasted 3 weeks. The bathroom renovation. The photography equipment. The lifestyle brand supplies. Should I continue? Those were investments in our future, Brian said. No, those were investments in your delusions. I picked up my phone again. Linda Pierce, real estate attorney. I have a meeting with her this afternoon. Want to guess what we'll be discussing? Jennifer stood abruptly, chair scraping loudly. You wouldn't actually evict us. Your own daughter. My own daughter told me not to come home while I was recovering from a heart attack. I kept my voice level, measured. That daughter doesn't exist anymore. I'm just protecting my assets from strangers who happen to share my last name. Over the next week, they tried everything. Jennifer brought home my favorite meals, or tried to. The pot roast was overcooked, the potatoes underdone. She'd never learned to cook properly, always relied on takeout or my efforts. She sat across from me at dinner, attempting small talk about her day at work, asking about my cardiac rehab. I answered in monosyllables. Yes, no, fine. Brian suddenly developed an interest in home maintenance. I found him in the garage one afternoon, attempting to organize my tools. He'd mixed up the socket sets, put the wrenches in the wrong drawers. 40 years of careful organization destroyed in his attempt to appear helpful. What are you doing? I asked from the doorway. Thought I'd help out. You know, with your heart and everything, you shouldn't be doing heavy work. So you're destroying my tool organization? I'm trying to help. His frustration showed through, anger simmering beneath the forced smile. You're making this impossible, Vernon. It's Mr. Bishop, I said, and you can leave my tools alone. Their tactics shifted. They started bringing up old memories. Remember when we went to the coast, Dad? Remember my high school graduation? Remember how happy we all were? I remembered. I remembered every moment they were trying to weaponize against me. The difference was I also remembered the last 3 years. Memory's funny that way. Selective amnesia only works if everyone's participating. The meeting with Linda Pierce happened on a Thursday afternoon. Her office sat on the 9th floor of a building in the Pearl District. All glass and steel and expensive views. She was younger than I expected. 45, maybe. With sharp eyes that missed nothing. Mr. Bishop. She shook my hand firmly. Clarence speaks highly of you. He speaks highly of everyone. It's annoying. She laughed. Fair enough. Let's talk about your situation. I laid it out methodically. 3 years of cohabitation without a lease. No rent paid, no formal agreement. The refinancing attempt with forged signatures, the debt load they were carrying. Linda took notes on a yellow legal pad, her pen moving quickly. Oregon's landlord-tenant law is clear on this, she said when I finished. They're tenants at will. Since they've been there over a year, you need to give 90 days' notice under ORS 90.427. After that, if they refuse to leave, you file for eviction through the circuit court. And the forgery? That's criminal. Bank fraud, identity theft, forgery, take your pick. She tapped her pen against the pad. You could file a police report. The Multnomah County DA would probably be interested, given the amount involved. How interested? $650,000 property? They'd be very interested. Class C felony, up to 5 years. She studied my face. Is that the route you want to take? I thought about Jennifer at 7, losing her first tooth. Jennifer at 15, hugging me after that concert situation. Jennifer at 22, crying at graduation. Then I thought about her face on that phone call, her voice saying, "Don't bother coming home." Let's start with the eviction, I said. The criminal charges are leverage if they don't cooperate. Smart. Linda pulled out a contract. My retainer is $5,000. Hourly rate is $350. Given the circumstances, I'd estimate total costs around $12,000 to $15,000 if it goes to court. Money well spent. I pulled out my checkbook, the same one I'd had for 20 years. Worn leather cover, pages filled with carefully logged transactions. Wrote the check with steady hands. Back home, Jennifer and Brian were in the living room, having what they probably thought was a private conversation. I could hear them from the driveway. He's not going to budge, Brian said. The old man's lost it. He's not lost anything. He's punishing us. For what? Being family? Using resources that would have been ours anyway? For the phone call. For everything. Jennifer's voice cracked. I messed up, Brian. I really messed up. So fix it. Cry more. Apologize better. Old people always forgive their kids eventually. Old people. As if I were some generic elderly person, not the man who'd raised Jennifer, paid for her education, given her everything. I opened the front door loudly, made sure they heard me coming. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Jennifer wiped her eyes quickly. Brian straightened his shoulders, putting on his confident face. How was your appointment? Jennifer asked, voice syrupy sweet. Productive. I set my keys in the bowl by the door, the ceramic bowl Jennifer had made in middle school art class, one of the few things I'd kept from her childhood. Attorneys drawing up formal eviction notices. You'll receive them early next week. You're really doing this, Brian said, not a question. Did you think I wasn't? I think you're making a mistake. He stepped forward, and for a moment I saw real anger flash across his face. We could make this very difficult for you. Fights over property rights, elder abuse claims, competency hearings. Are you threatening me? I'm stating facts, but his voice wavered. Courts don't look kindly on people who kick out family members, especially elderly people who might not be thinking clearly after medical trauma. I smiled, actually smiled. By all means, try. You'll need an attorney for that. Wonder how you'll pay for one, given your debt situation? Jennifer grabbed Brian's arm. Stop. Just stop. She turned to me, and for a second I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Dad, please. Can we talk about this? Really talk, not just talk. I moved toward the stairs. You had 3 years to talk to me like I mattered. Now I'm done listening. That night, lying in the guest room that used to be for actual guests, I heard them arguing again. Louder this time. Words tumbling over each other in desperation. Jennifer blamed Brian. Brian blamed Jennifer. They both blamed me for being unreasonable and cruel. Not once did they blame themselves. I pulled out my phone and recorded 30 seconds of their argument. Just insurance. Then I rolled over and went to sleep, the sound of their panic playing like a lullaby. The eviction notices arrived on a Tuesday morning via certified mail. I watched from the kitchen window as Jennifer signed for the thick manila envelope. Her hand trembled so badly the postal worker had to steady the clipboard. She opened it right there on the porch. I saw her face go from confused to horrified in the space of a breath. The papers fluttered in her grip as she read. Brian appeared behind her, yanking the documents from her hands. His jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. 90 days. That's what Linda had filed for. 90 days to vacate the premises, remove all belongings, and return the property to its rightful owner. The notice cited Oregon Revised Statutes 90.427 in precise legal language that left no room for interpretation. They came inside like a storm. Brian slammed the door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. Jennifer's mascara had already started running. She'd been crying on the porch. "This is insane," Brian said, waving the papers. "You can't just throw us out on the street." "I'm not throwing you anywhere." I continued stirring my oatmeal calmly. "I'm giving you 90 days to find alternate housing. That's more than fair." "Fair?" Jennifer's voice broke. "We've lived here for 3 years. We have rights. You have the right to rent an apartment like every other adult in America." I took a spoonful of breakfast, savored the warmth. "Consider this your eviction notice and your wake-up call. They came in the same envelope." Brian dropped into a chair, running calculations I could see playing across his face. 3 months. Security deposits. First and last month's rent. Moving costs. With their debt load, they'd need at least $8,000 up front just to secure a decent place. Money they didn't have. "Where are we supposed to go?" Jennifer asked. "Do you have any idea how expensive rent is in Portland?" "I do, actually. Checked Zillow last night. 2-bedroom apartments in East Portland run about $1,400 a month. Add utilities, and you're looking at $1,600 total." I smiled slightly. Better start budgeting. "This is revenge," Brian said. "Pure revenge. You're punishing us for one mistake. Multiple mistakes. And yes, it's accountability. Novel concept. I know." Over the following week, they hired an attorney, or tried to. The first 3 firms they contacted turned them down. Small retainers, complicated case, clients with obvious credibility issues. Finally, they found someone willing to take them on. Marcus Webb, according to the business card I found left on the counter, practices out of a strip mall in Gresham. Reviews online were mixed at best. Webb sent Linda a letter demanding we halt eviction proceedings while they explored their options regarding tenant rights and potential elder abuse claims. Linda called me, read it aloud, then laughed so hard I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "He's fishing," she said. "Classic desperation move. Threatens elder abuse, competency issues, anything that might make you back down. Will it work? Only if you're actually incompetent, which you're clearly not. I'll respond with medical documentation from your doctors showing full cognitive function. We'll also include records of all the money you've given them over 3 years. Shows a pattern of them exploiting you, not the reverse." "How long until court?" "They filed for a hearing. Judge Harrison's docket is backed up. Probably mid-July for the actual eviction hearing." She paused. "Vernon, there's something else you should consider. The forgery. That bank application. We could file criminal charges." I'd been thinking about that, weighing it. What would that involve? Police report to start. Portland PD, White-Collar Crime Division. They'd investigate, hand it to the Multnomah County DA. Given the amount involved and the clear evidence, they'd likely prosecute. Brian would be looking at a Class C felony, 3 to 5 years if convicted. 3 to 5 years. I thought about Jennifer visiting Brian in prison, trying to explain to their future children why Daddy was gone. Thought about how that would destroy what was left of their lives. Then I thought about lying in that ICU bed, wires crossing my chest, listening to Jennifer tell me not to come home. "File it," I said. The police came on a Thursday. 2 detectives, Rodriguez and Thompson, mid-40s. Professional, thorough. I gave them everything. The bank documents showing the forged signature. My actual signature for comparison. The rejection letter citing documentation irregularities. Even the photographs I'd taken of other bills and statements. Brian was out when they arrived. Jennifer sat frozen on the new sectional sofa, watching the detectives take notes. Her face had gone pale as paper. "Mrs. Parker," Detective Rodriguez said gently, "did you have knowledge of your husband's attempt to refinance this property?" Jennifer's mouth opened, closed. I don't... I'd advise you to speak with an attorney before answering any questions." Detective Thompson added, "This is a serious matter. Bank fraud is a federal crime." After they left, Jennifer sat in stunned silence for 20 minutes. I made myself a sandwich, ate it at the kitchen table, flipped through the Oregonian like it was any other Thursday. "You called the police on us," she finally said, "on your own family." "I reported a crime. There's a difference. Brian's going to prison. Do you understand that? Prison. He committed a felony." I folded the newspaper neatly. "Actions have consequences. Something I should have taught you better when you were younger." She stood abruptly, knocking over a decorative pillow. "You're destroying our lives." "No, sweetheart. You destroyed your own lives. I'm just declining to be collateral damage." That Sunday, they made their most desperate play yet. I was in the garage organizing tools, putting them back the way they belonged after Brian's help, when a white sedan pulled up. A woman in her 50s emerged, carrying a clipboard and wearing an official-looking lanyard. Social Services. Brian appeared from nowhere, suddenly concerned and attentive. "Thank you so much for coming, Miss Patterson. We're really worried about him." I walked out slowly, wiping grease from my hands, played it perfectly calm. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Bishop?" The woman, Ms. Patterson, smiled professionally. "I'm Carol Patterson from Adult Protective Services. Your family called with some concerns about your well-being." "Did they now?" "They mentioned you recently had a serious medical event and might be experiencing some confusion, making impulsive decisions." She glanced at her notes. "Possibly unsafe to live independently." I saw Brian's game immediately. Declare me incompetent. Get guardianship. Control my assets. Not bad for someone who couldn't keep a coffee business running for a month. "Would you like to come inside?" I asked. "I just made fresh coffee. We can talk." Inside, I gave Ms. Patterson the full tour, showed her my medication organizer, perfectly sorted by day and time, my cardiac rehab schedule, never missed an appointment, my medical records from Dr. Patel, all indicating excellent recovery and full cognitive function. Then I showed her my work history. 35 years at Portland Urban Planning. The awards, the commendations from 3 different mayors, the historic preservation work, photos of me speaking at city council meetings, presenting to the Planning Commission. As you can see, I said, my mind is quite sound. Ms. Patterson took notes, nodded. Mr. Bishop, I'm required to ask, do you feel safe in this home? Is anyone pressuring you or controlling your finances? Interesting question. I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. Knew this was coming, thanks to Clarence's warning. Here are bank statements showing 3 years of withdrawals, benefiting my daughter and her husband. Roughly $80,000 total. Here's the police report I filed regarding attempted bank fraud. And here, I handed her the eviction notice. Here's my legal action to protect my property. Her eyebrows rose as she reviewed everything. I see. My daughter and son-in-law are in significant debt. They're facing eviction and possible criminal charges. This call wasn't about my welfare. It was about them trying to maintain control of my assets. I kept my voice level, factual. I appreciate you doing your due diligence, Ms. Patterson, but as you can see, I'm the victim here, not the abuser. Brian's face had gone from confident to ashen. Jennifer sat on the couch, head in her hands. Ms. Patterson stood, collecting her materials. Mr. Bishop, you appear to be in full control of your faculties and making informed decisions about your property and care. I'll note in my report that the concerns raised appear to be unfounded. She turned to Jennifer and Brian. Filing false reports with APS is a serious matter. I strongly suggest you focus on addressing your own situation. After she left, the silence stretched thin and dangerous. Nice try, I said finally. But I survived 40 years of city bureaucracy. You think one social worker was going to intimidate me? We were trying to help you, Brian said weakly. No, you were trying to steal from me legally instead of illegally. Points for creativity, I suppose. I headed for the stairs. 82 days until you're out. Better start packing. That night, I heard them fighting again. Really fighting this time. Crashes, thuds. Jennifer screaming that this was all Brian's fault. Brian shouting back that she was the one who made the phone call that started everything. I lay in bed listening to my family tear itself apart and felt nothing but the cold satisfaction of watching dominoes fall exactly as planned. June arrived with unseasonable heat. Portland temperatures climbed into the 90s, and the house, built in 1925 without central air, became a pressure cooker of tension and sweat. Jennifer stopped going to work some days. I'd hear her on the phone with her manager at Powell Marketing, making excuses about family emergencies and stress. Her voice carried through the thin walls, pitchy and desperate. Brian spent hours in what used to be my bedroom, door closed, doing whatever unemployed consultants do when their world collapses. The financial pressure showed in small ways first. Generic brands appeared in the pantry instead of organic. The expensive craft beers vanished, replaced by cheap domestics. I noticed Jennifer's nails, she'd always kept them professionally manicured, growing out, polished, chipped, and neglected. Clarence stopped by one afternoon while they were both out apartment hunting. He carried a folder under his arm and wore his serious face. "You're the talk of Laurelhurst," he said, settling into my porch chair. "Am I now?" Betsy Morrison asked me about it at the grocery store. Said she heard Jennifer and Brian were being evicted by Jennifer's father. He opened the folder. Then Karen Walsh mentioned it at the hardware store, and Phil Henderson brought it up at the Rotary Club meeting. How does everyone know? Jennifer told someone at her work. That someone told their neighbor. Neighbors talk. He shrugged. You know how it works. Small community. Big drama. The gossip mill. I'd forgotten about that particular weapon. In a neighborhood like Laurelhurst, established families, long-term residents, everyone knowing everyone's business, reputation mattered. Jennifer and Brian were becoming the cautionary tale people whispered about over coffee. What are they saying? I asked. That you're being abused by your daughter and her husband, that they've been living off you for years, that they tried to steal your house. Clarence pulled out a newspaper clipping. This doesn't help their case either. It was from the Multnomah County Court records, published in the legal notices section of the Oregonian. My eviction filing printed in black and white for anyone searching court documents. Bishop v. Parker. Case number, hearing date, mid-July. Just like Linda said, everything public record. Linda says this is good for us, I said. Shows pattern of behavior if they try to claim I'm being unreasonable. It's more than good. It's devastating for them. Clarence leaned forward. Vernon, I don't think you realize how bad their situation is. Between the debt, the eviction, and the criminal investigation, they're toxic. No landlord will touch them. No bank will loan to them. They're in free fall. I should have felt something. Guilt, maybe. Remorse. Instead, I felt the same cold clarity that had sustained me since the hospital. They made their choices. They did, Clarence agreed. Just wanted you to know what's happening out there. The neighborhood's on your side, completely. After he left, I sat on the porch watching the afternoon shadows lengthen. Across the street, Betsy Morrison waved from her garden. 2 houses down, Phil Henderson gave me a thumbs up while walking his dog, the silent support of people who'd known me for decades. The court hearing arrived on a sweltering Tuesday in mid-July, the Multnomah County Courthouse downtown, Judge Harrison presiding. Linda met me outside, wearing a navy suit that meant business. They're already inside, she said. Webb looks nervous. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights, cheap paneling, the seal of Oregon mounted behind the judge's bench. Jennifer and Brian sat at the defendant's table with Marcus Webb, their strip mall attorney. Jennifer wore a conservative dress I'd never seen before, probably borrowed. Brian had squeezed into a suit that didn't quite fit right, collar too tight, jacket straining at the shoulders. Judge Harrison entered, mid-50s, silver hair, reading glasses. He reviewed the file for several minutes before speaking. This is an eviction proceeding, he said. Bishop versus Parker. Mr. Bishop seeks to remove tenants from his property at 1847 S.E. Ankeny Street after 90 days' notice. Ms. Pierce, your opening? Linda stood smoothly. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case. Mr. Bishop owns the property in question. The defendants have resided there for 3 years without a lease, without paying rent, and without contributing to household expenses. Under ORS 90.427, Mr. Bishop provided proper notice. We're asking the court to grant the eviction. Webb stumbled through his response. Talked about verbal agreements, family obligations, the hardship eviction would cause. Judge Harrison listened with the patient expression of someone who'd heard it all before. Mr. Webb, the judge interrupted, do you have any documentation of a rental agreement? Any proof of rent payments? Well, no, Your Honor, but any lease, written or otherwise? It was an informal family arrangement. That's not a legal basis to prevent eviction. Judge Harrison turned to me. Mr. Bishop, you're the property owner of record? Yes, Your Honor. Purchased in 1998. Deeds in my name alone. And you provided 90 days' notice as required. I did. The judge reviewed more papers. I see there's also a pending criminal investigation related to attempted bank fraud involving this property. Brian's face went white. Jennifer grabbed his hand under the table. Yes, Your Honor, Linda said. The defendants attempted to refinance Mr. Bishop's property without authorization using forged signatures. The Multnomah County District Attorney is reviewing charges. Judge Harrison's expression hardened. He removed his glasses, fixed Brian and Jennifer with a look that could have frozen lava. So you're living rent-free in your father-in-law's house, not contributing financially, and attempted to steal his equity through fraud. Webb opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Your Honor, Jennifer said suddenly, voice cracking, my father had a heart attack. We were trying to help. By forging his signature on loan documents? No, that's not. We were desperate. Desperation doesn't justify fraud, Miss Parker. The judge put his glasses back on. This court grants the eviction. Defendants have 45 days from today to vacate the premises. That's September 1st. Any belongings remaining after that date will be considered abandoned. The gavel came down. Sharp. Final. Jennifer burst into tears. Brian sat frozen, looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Webb gathered his papers quickly, avoiding eye contact. Outside the courthouse, Linda shook my hand. Clean victory. 45 days is actually generous. Judge could have given them 30. September 1st? I repeated. The date felt symbolic somehow. Labor Day weekend. New beginnings. They'll likely appeal, Linda warned. But given the circumstances, I doubt it'll go anywhere. You've got a solid case. I watched Jennifer and Brian exit the building. She leaned on him heavily, face buried in his shoulder. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Marcus Webb said something to them, gestured helplessly, then walked away toward the parking garage. Even their attorney was abandoning them. The Uber ride home felt different, lighter. I looked at Portland passing by, the food cart pods, the Powell's Books building, the bridges crossing the Willamette. My city, the place I'd spent my career trying to improve, to preserve, to protect. Now I was protecting myself. That evening I found a note on the kitchen counter. Jennifer's handwriting, shaky and rushed. Dad, please, we need to talk. Really talk. Before it's too late. Jay, I folded the note carefully, put it in my pocket, went to my computer and checked my bank accounts, my investment portfolios, my retirement funds. Everything in order, everything protected. Then I pulled up rental listings for East Portland, found several options in their price range, small apartments, older buildings, nothing fancy but adequate. Printed them out, left them on the counter where Jennifer would find them. A olive branch, sort of. More like a roadmap to their new reality. Through the walls, I heard Brian's voice raised. Your father is destroying us. Everything we built. We built nothing, Jennifer shouted back. We lived off him like parasites. Don't you see that? The first crack of self-awareness. About time. I made myself dinner, salmon, roasted vegetables, a glass of decent wine. Ate alone at the kitchen table with the window open, warm July air carrying the scent of roses from Betsy Morrison's garden. 43 days until they were gone. 43 days until my house was mine again. I could wait. August brought no relief from the heat or the tension. The house felt smaller each day, packed with boxed belongings and simmering resentment. Jennifer and Brian moved through the rooms like ghosts, avoiding each other, avoiding me, avoiding the reality of September 1st approaching with the inevitability of a freight train. The Lexus disappeared on a Thursday morning. I was drinking coffee on the porch when the tow truck arrived. Bank of America repo, according to the logo on the side. Two men worked efficiently, hooking up the SUV while Jennifer watched from the doorway in her bathrobe. Her face had gone slack, expressionless, like she'd run out of reactions to process. Brian came charging out. You can't take that. I'm only 2 months behind. 3 months, sir, the driver said, checking his paperwork, and according to the lender, you haven't returned their calls in 6 weeks. I was dealing with a family emergency. Not my problem. The truck lifted the Lexus smoothly. $85,000 worth of image building vanishing down S.E. Ankeny Street. Several neighbors watched from their yards. I saw Betsy Morrison shaking her head, and Phil Henderson actually filming it on his phone. The theater of consequences. Better than anything on television. Brian stood in the driveway long after the truck disappeared, arms hanging at his sides. Then he turned and saw me on the porch with my coffee. Enjoying the show? He asked bitterly. Just drinking my morning coffee. You made it a show. He walked toward me, fists clenched. For a moment I thought he might actually swing. Hoped he would, honestly. Assault charges would make everything so much cleaner. This is all your fault, he said, voice low and dangerous. Everything that's happening to us. No, Brian. This is all your fault. Mine was just stopping the bleeding. I took another sip. How's the apartment search going? His jaw worked. Every place we apply turns us down. Bad credit, eviction on record, pending criminal charges. We're untouchable. Consequences, I said simply. Funny how they accumulate. He stormed back inside. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the porch railings. That afternoon, Detectives Rodriguez and Thompson returned. Brian's face went from angry to terrified in the span of a breath when he saw them through the window. They sat in the living room, my expensive new living room, courtesy of debt-financed furniture, and laid out the situation in calm, professional tones. The Multnomah County DA is prepared to file charges, Rodriguez said. Bank fraud, forgery, identity theft. We're looking at a Class C felony. Standard sentence runs 3 to 5 years. Jennifer made a sound like a wounded animal. Brian's hands trembled. However, Thompson continued, the DA is willing to offer a plea agreement. Mr. Parker pleads guilty to attempted fraud, accepts 3 years supervised probation, and pays restitution of $50,000 to Mr. Bishop. No jail time if he complies fully. $50,000. I watched Brian process that number, watched him calculate how impossible it was, how utterly beyond his reach. And if he doesn't take the deal? Jennifer asked quietly. Trial. If convicted, mandatory minimum of 3 years in state prison, possible maximum of 5. Plus restitution, legal fees, court costs. Rodriguez handed Brian a business card. You've got until next Tuesday to decide. Talk to your attorney. After they left, Brian sat motionless on the sectional sofa. Jennifer paced, arms wrapped around herself, spiraling into full panic mode. $50,000, she repeated. Where are we supposed to get $50,000? Your father, Brian said flatly. Ask him. They both turned to look at me. I'd been standing in the kitchen doorway witnessing the whole scene. Absolutely not, I said. Dad, please. Jennifer's voice broke. Brian will go to prison. Our lives will be destroyed. Your lives are already destroyed. You did that yourselves. I pulled out a chair, sat down at my own kitchen table. I paid your debts before. $15,000 for credit cards, $8,000 for equipment, bathroom renovation. Every single time you promised things would change. They never did. This is different. This is exactly the same. You want me to bail you out so you can keep pretending your choices don't matter? I shook my head. I'm done being your safety net, Jennifer. You're going to land on the ground this time. Feel how hard it is. Brian stood abruptly. You're a miserable old man who can't stand seeing other people happy. I'm a man who finally stopped letting his family steal from him. I met his eyes calmly. Take the plea deal, Brian. 3 years probation is better than prison. Figure out how to make the payments. Get a job, a real one. Join the rest of us in the adult world. He stormed out. Jennifer stayed, tears streaming down her face. I remember when you used to love me, she said softly. I still love you. That's why this hurts. I stood, moved toward the stairs. But love doesn't mean letting you destroy yourself. Or me. Over the next 2 weeks, their apartment search grew increasingly desperate. They'd applied to 23 places according to the spreadsheet I saw Jennifer working on. 23 rejections. The eviction on their record, Brian's pending criminal case, their combined debt load. They'd become untouchable in Portland's competitive rental market. Finally, they found something. A studio apartment in East Portland, near 82nd Avenue. Not the glamorous area they'd imagined for themselves. The building was old, the neighborhood rough, but the landlord, some guy who owned several rundown properties, agreed to take them for $1,100 a month, plus a massive security deposit of $3,000. Jennifer's mother loaned them the money. I'd never met the woman. She and Jennifer's late father had divorced when Jennifer was young, minimal contact after. But desperation makes people reach out to anyone who might help. We're signing the lease tomorrow, Jennifer announced one evening. Move-in date is September 1st. Convenient timing, I said. She looked exhausted, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. The polished marketing professional had disappeared, replaced by this hollow-eyed stranger. I found something else too, she said, when I was packing. In the garage. She handed me an old shoebox. Inside were letters, ones I'd written to her during her freshman year of college. Pages of fatherly advice, encouragement, stupid jokes to make her laugh during finals week. I'd sent one every week for the entire year. I'd forgotten about these, she said. Reading them now, I don't recognize that person anymore. The daughter you wrote to. The one who cared about something besides money and appearances. She's still in there somewhere. Is she? Jennifer's voice cracked. Because I'm not sure anymore. I look at what we did to you, what I did, and I don't understand how we got here. One bad decision at a time, I said, compounding. She nodded slowly. Brian's taking the plea deal. His attorney says it's the smart move. $50,000 in restitution, payable over 3 years. He'll have to get a real job finally. And you? I'm staying at Powell Marketing. They haven't fired me yet, though everyone knows about the eviction. She laughed bitterly. I'm the office scandal. The woman whose father kicked her out. The woman who tried to steal her father's house, I corrected. Words matter, Jennifer. Yeah. She picked up the shoebox. Can I keep these? The letters? They're yours? She left the kitchen carrying pieces of a better past when things had been simpler, when she'd been someone worth writing to every week. The last week of August arrived with cooler temperatures and a sense of finality. Boxes filled every room. U-Haul reservations were made. Jennifer and Brian barely spoke to each other, communicating through terse text messages and post-it notes. I watched it all with the detachment of an urban planner observing a failed development project, documenting the collapse, taking notes, learning lessons for future reference. On the morning of August 31st, Brian signed the plea agreement at the courthouse. 3 years probation, $50,000 in restitution, community service requirements. Judge Harrison presided over that too, made sure Brian understood every term, every condition, every consequence of violation. "This is mercy, Mr. Parker," the judge said. "Don't waste it." Brian nodded numbly, signed everywhere the prosecutor indicated. That evening I sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. Tomorrow they'd be gone. Tomorrow my house would be mine again. Tomorrow I could start repairing what they'd broken, not just the physical space, but something harder to name. Clarence joined me with 2 beers. We sat in comfortable silence the way old friends do. "You won," he said finally. "Did I?" "Legally, financially, morally. Yes, absolutely." He took a sip. "But Vernon, you look tired." "I am tired." I stared at the sunset. Winning is exhausting. Regrets? I thought about that. About the heart attack, about the phone call, about every moment that led to this one. "No," I said finally. "They needed to learn this lesson. I just wish I hadn't been the one who had to teach it." We sat until the stars came out. 2 old men on a porch, bearing witness to the end of something that never should have happened in the first place. September 1st dawned cool and gray. Marine layer fog rolled in from the Willamette, blanketing Laurelhurst in thick moisture that clung to everything. Appropriate weather for an ending. The U-Haul arrived at 7 in the morning. Brian had rented the smallest size they offered, 10 feet, barely enough for a studio apartment's worth of furniture. He and Jennifer loaded boxes in tense silence, working like strangers forced together by circumstance rather than marriage. I stayed out of their way, made coffee, read the newspaper, pretended this was a normal Saturday morning. But I watched through the kitchen window, documenting every trip they made from house to truck. Around noon, Jennifer came inside one last time. She was searching for something in the garage, digging through the boxes I'd moved there months ago when Brian took over my bedroom. I heard her moving things around, the scrape of cardboard on concrete. Then silence. I walked to the garage door. Jennifer stood frozen, holding a cardboard box I'd forgotten existed. Inside were my awards from the city planning department. 35 years of commendations, certificates, plaques. The Portland Historic Preservation Award from the mayor in 1995. The Urban Planning Excellence Award from the American Planning Association. Letters from city council members thanking me for specific projects. Newspaper clippings about the Pearl District renovation I'd helped design. "What is all this?" she asked quietly. "My career." She pulled out the Historic Preservation Award, running her fingers over the engraved brass plate. "You saved 14 buildings from demolition. It says so right here. Why didn't you ever tell me?" "You never asked?" Jennifer set the award down carefully like it might break, pulled out another, this one from the governor's office, recognizing my work on statewide zoning reform. Then another, and another. A lifetime of achievement she'd never bothered to learn about. "There's a newspaper article here," she said, holding up a yellowed clipping from the Oregonian. From 2003, Vernon Bishop, Portland's quiet guardian of history. It talks about how you personally fought developers who wanted to tear down the buildings on NW 21st. You testified at 18 different council meetings. You won. I remember. "Dad, this says you were offered a position in the mayor's office. Chief planning advisor. You turned it down? The job required too much travel. You were in high school. I wanted to be home for dinner." I leaned against the doorframe. "Priorities." She looked at me then, really looked, like she was seeing someone she'd never met. "I had no idea. All these years I thought you were just a city employee. A desk job. Nothing special." "Nothing special," I repeated. The word stung more than I expected. "Is that what you thought?" "We assumed—" She trailed off, face reddening. "Brian said you were probably making 40 or 50,000 a year when you retired. that your pension was small, that you needed us as much as we needed you. The depth of their ignorance was almost impressive. My pension is $92,000 annually, plus Social Security, plus investment returns. Her mouth opened, closed. How much do you have saved? More than enough. I wasn't going to give her exact numbers. Let her imagination fill in the blanks. The house alone is worth $650,000. Then there's retirement accounts, investments, bonds. I was a city employee, Jennifer, not a charity case. She sank onto an overturned box, awards scattered around her feet. We thought we were helping you, keeping you company. Brian said elderly people need family around to stay healthy. Brian said a lot of convenient things. Oh my God, she put her head in her hands. We treated you like you were nothing, just a wallet with a pulse. And all this time, you were someone important, someone who mattered. I always mattered. You just stopped noticing. Brian appeared in the garage doorway. Jennifer, we need to go. The studio's rental office closes at 3. He saw the awards, saw Jennifer's face. What's going on? Did you know Dad was basically a city hero? Jennifer held up the Historic Preservation Award. That he saved entire neighborhoods? That the governor personally thanked him for his work? Brian's face went carefully blank. That's great, Vernon. Very impressive. You knew, Jennifer said slowly. You knew, and you didn't tell me. I knew he had a decent pension, yeah. So what? So we've been treating him like he was some poor retired clerk who needed our help. Her voice climbed, when really we were the ones drowning, and he was the only thing keeping us afloat. Keep your voice down. Brian glanced toward the street where neighbors were definitely listening. This isn't the time. When is the time, Brian? After we've lost everything? After we've burned every bridge? Jennifer stood, shoving the box toward him. Look at this. Really look. This is who my father is, and we tried to steal his house. The shame hit her all at once. I watched it spread across her face like a stain, the full weight of what they'd done, who they'd done it to, what they'd destroyed in the process. She started crying, huge gasping sobs that shook her whole body. Brian tried to take her arm. She pulled away violently. Don't touch me. This is your fault. You told me he was just an old man with some savings. You told me we deserved this house more than he did. You told me... She broke off, crying too hard to continue. I told you what you wanted to hear, Brian said coldly. Don't pretend you weren't part of every decision we made. The truth of it shut her up. She had been part of it. Every choice, every manipulation, every casual cruelty. They'd built their delusions together, brick by brick. I picked up one of the awards, the one from the American Planning Association, solid walnut with brass plating, and set it back in the box carefully. You should finish loading. The rental office closes soon. Jennifer wiped her face roughly. Dad, not now. I couldn't do this now. Couldn't process their belated understanding while they stood in my garage, surrounded by evidence of their ignorance. Just finish, please. They loaded the last boxes in silence. The U-Haul filled slowly. Furniture that had looked so impressive in my spacious craftsman house now looked cheap and shabby in the harsh daylight. The West Elm sectional had a stain I'd never noticed. The reclaimed wood coffee table had a cracked leg. All of it bought on credit they couldn't afford, to impress people who didn't care. Brian climbed into the driver's seat. Jennifer hesitated at the passenger door, looking back at the house one more time. Her eyes were red, swollen. She looked small, diminished. I'll call you, she said, once we're settled. If you want. I do want. I need to figure out how to apologize for something this big. Start with being honest with yourself, I said, about who you became and why. She nodded, got in the truck. The diesel engine rattled to life, and they pulled away from the curb slowly. I watched until they turned the corner onto 39th Avenue and disappeared. The house felt different immediately, quieter, larger, like it had been holding its breath for 3 years and could finally exhale. I walked through the rooms, slowly, taking inventory. They'd left the furniture, couldn't fit it in the studio, I supposed. Left the television, too. The expensive espresso machine sat on the counter, gathering dust, a monument to failed ambitions. In what had been my bedroom, I found Brian's desk setup still partially assembled. 3 monitors, cables everywhere, the gaming chair. He'd forgotten it in the rush. I'd have Clarence help me haul it to Goodwill. My bed was there too, shoved against the wall, unmade and dusty. I stripped the sheets, threw them in the washing machine, remade it with fresh linens from the closet, reclaimed my space inch by inch. The workshop in the garage still held Brian's gym equipment. Weights, a bench press, a rack of dumbbells, probably $1,200 worth of gear-gathering cobwebs, another donation pile. I spent the afternoon cleaning, wiping down surfaces, vacuuming corners, opening windows to let fresh air chase away 3 years of accumulated tension. The house slowly transformed back into mine. Not perfect, not yet, but recognizable. That evening, Clarence came over with steaks and a bottle of decent whiskey. We grilled in the backyard, standing around my Weber, like we used to before Jennifer and Brian moved in. The meat sizzled, fat dripping onto coals, smoke rising into the cooling September air. "How do you feel?" Clarence asked. "Empty," I admitted. "Relieved, angry, sad, all of it at once. That's healthy." He flipped the steaks expertly. "Means you're human. Sometimes I wish I wasn't." We ate at the patio table, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The neighbors' lights came on one by one. Phil Henderson waved from his deck. Betsy Morrison called out a greeting from her garden. Life in Laurelhurst continuing as it always had. The drama passed, the neighborhood settling back into comfortable routine. I was just Vernon Bishop again. Not the wronged father, not the evicting landlord, just Vernon. "Did she realize," Clarence asked, "about your career, your reputation?" "She found my awards, saw the newspaper articles." I took a drink of whiskey, felt the burn, had a moment of clarity about exactly who she'd been stealing from. Better late than never. Is it? I wasn't sure. The realization came too late to matter after the damage was already done. Knowledge without change is just guilt. Give her time. Maybe she'll surprise you. Maybe, but I wasn't holding my breath. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time in months. The room was mine again. The house was mine again. Everything exactly as it should have been all along. But as I drifted off, I couldn't help wondering, was winning supposed to feel this hollow? 3 weeks passed before Jennifer called. I'd spent those weeks systematically reclaiming my house. Donated the expensive furniture to a charity that helped domestic violence survivors. Seemed fitting somehow. Hauled Brian's forgotten gym equipment to Goodwill, watching the workers load 40-pound dumbbells into their truck. Repainted my bedroom, hanging my own photographs back on the walls. Pictures from city projects, historic buildings I'd helped save, Portland landmarks I'd influenced. The house felt like mine again, smelled like mine, moved around me the way a well-worn shoe fits a foot. Comfortable, familiar, right. Clarence helped me install new locks. Probably unnecessary, he said, but it sends a message. What message? That chapter's closed, permanently. When Jennifer's call came, I almost didn't answer. Her name on my phone screen brought back too much. The good memories now tainted by everything that followed. But curiosity won. "Dad?" Her voice sounded small, tired. "Can we talk?" "We're talking now." "I mean in person, please. There are things I need to say to you." I considered refusing. Would have been easier. But I'd spent 3 years avoiding difficult conversations, letting small problems grow into catastrophes. Maybe it was time to face things head on. "Stumptown coffee on Division," I said. "Tomorrow at 2. She arrived 10 minutes early. I watched her through the window as she sat at an outdoor table, fidgeting with her phone, checking the time repeatedly. She wore simple clothes. Jeans, a plain t-shirt, hair pulled back, no makeup, the polished facade completely gone. I ordered my coffee slowly, made her wait. Not out of cruelty, just testing whether she'd stay or bolt. When I finally sat down across from her, she looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "Thanks for meeting me," she said. "You look terrible." A bitter laugh escaped her. "I feel terrible. The studio it's small, really small. We can hear our neighbors through the walls. There's a leak in the bathroom the landlord won't fix. And Brian," she trailed off. "What about Brian?" "We're separating, probably divorcing." She said it flat, matter of fact. "Turns out when you strip away the comfortable house and the free ride, there's not much left between us. He blames me for everything. For the eviction, for the criminal charges, for his probation. I blame him for pushing me to treat you like an ATM. You both share that blame equally. I know. She twisted her coffee cup. I spent the last 3 weeks thinking about when it all went wrong. When I stopped seeing you as my father and started seeing you as a resource, an inconvenience. I don't have a good answer. It was gradual, I said. Small choices that became patterns. Patterns that became character. Brian got a job. Warehouse work, overnight shift, $11 an hour. He hates it. Comes home exhausted, angry at the world. She smiled without humor. I told him that's what real work feels like. He didn't appreciate that. I sipped my coffee. Waited. The restitution payments started last week. We owe you $50,000 over 3 years. That's $1,389 a month. She pulled out a folded paper, a payment schedule. I did the math. Between my salary and Brian's warehouse job, after rent and utilities and food, we have maybe $200 left each month. We can't make the payments. That's not my problem. I know. I'm not asking you to forgive the debt. She met my eyes. I'm telling you so you understand. We're going to violate the plea agreement. Brian will go back to court. He'll probably go to prison. The information settled between us. A statement of fact, not a plea for sympathy. Does he know you're telling me this? I asked. He doesn't know I'm here at all. He'd lose it if he found out. She unfolded the paper, showed me the numbers in her neat handwriting. I wanted you to know that I understand the consequences now. What we did, what it cost, what happens next. No more denying reality. I studied her face. She looked older, harder, like life had finally caught up with her entitled assumptions and crushed them flat. Why tell me? I asked. What do you want from this conversation? Nothing. I want nothing. Her voice cracked slightly. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. Who you are. What we took from you. I found more articles online about your work, your career. You testified in front of state legislature twice. You wrote policy that's still in use today. You saved history, Dad. Real, actual history. And we treated you like you were nobody. Yes, you did. She flinched but didn't look away. I also wanted to apologize. Really apologize. Not the manipulative kind where I'm trying to get something. Just, I'm sorry. For all of it. For the phone call at the hospital. For living off you. For Brian's forgery. For every moment we made you feel small and unimportant. You deserve so much better from me. The words hit harder than expected. I'd imagined this conversation dozens of times, practiced my cold responses, prepared my emotional armor, but hearing genuine remorse, watching her sit there without defenses, offering nothing but acknowledgement of harm done, that was different. I don't forgive you, I said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I understand. But I appreciate you saying it, owning it. I finished my coffee. What happens when Brian violates probation? His lawyer says probably a year in county jail for violation, plus whatever the judge decides about the original charges. Could be 2 years total. She wrapped her arms around herself. I'll divorce him while he's inside. Start over completely. I'm already looking for a second job. Weekends, maybe nights. Anything to get ahead of the debt. You could declare bankruptcy. I could. She shook her head. But that feels like running away again. I caused this debt. I'll pay it. We sat in silence. Around us, Portland moved, cyclists passing on Division, students from the nearby coffee shop, families pushing strollers, life continuing its indifferent forward motion. I kept those letters, Jennifer said suddenly. The ones you wrote when I was in college. I read them every night now, trying to remember who I was before I became this person. She's still in there, just buried under bad decisions. Is she? Jennifer stood, gathering her things. I'm not sure anymore, but I'm going to try to find out. For me, not for you. I don't expect anything from you, Dad. Not forgiveness, not help, not a relationship. I just wanted you to know that I finally see clearly what we did. That matters to me, even if it doesn't to you. She walked away without looking back. I watched her disappear down Division Street, shoulders squared, despite carrying the weight of total life collapse. Clarence texted that evening. Heard Jennifer came by. How'd it go? She apologized. Genuinely, I think. What did you say? That I don't forgive her yet. Do you think you will? Eventually? I stared at my phone, considering. Trust shattered doesn't simply rebuild because someone says sorry. Respect lost takes years to earn back. Love twisted into manipulation doesn't untangle with one coffee shop conversation. But something had shifted. Some small space opened between complete rejection and grudging acknowledgement. Not forgiveness, not even close, but maybe the possibility of it someday, if she kept walking the hard road she'd chosen. I don't know, I texted back. Ask me in a year. That night, I sat in my workshop, fully reclaimed now, tools organized, projects in progress, and worked on a piece of furniture I'd started before they moved in. A bookshelf, quarter-sawn oak, hand-cut dovetails. 3 years abandoned, now slowly taking shape again. The work felt good, honest, creating something with my hands, building rather than destroying, moving forward rather than dwelling on the past. My phone buzzed. Linda Pierce. Vernon, just an update. Brian Parker missed his first restitution payment. Probation officer filed a violation report. Court date set for October 15th. Thought you should know. October 15th, 3 weeks away, the next domino falling exactly on schedule. I set down my chisel and looked at the unfinished bookshelf. Wondered if Jennifer would really try to find herself, or if she'd crumble under the pressure like she always had. Wondered if Brian would survive jail or come out angrier and more entitled than before. Wondered if I cared about the answers to those questions. The house settled around me with its familiar creaks and sighs. My house, my space, my life, finally my own, again after 3 years of occupation. The victory should have felt sweet. Instead, it just felt quiet. Quiet was good enough. October arrived with typical Portland rain, the kind that settles in for days, turning the city gray and introspective. I didn't attend Brian's probation violation hearing. Linda went as my representative and called me afterward with the verdict. 18 months in Multnomah County Detention Center, she said. Judge Harrison was not sympathetic. Said Parker had been given mercy once and squandered it. He starts serving in 2 weeks. And the restitution? Still owed in full. The debt doesn't disappear because he's incarcerated. Jennifer's on the hook for it too. They were both listed as liable. Papers rustled on her end. Vernon, this is done. You won. Completely and totally. But winning felt less satisfying than I'd imagined back in that ICU bed. More complicated. Jennifer's genuine remorse had muddied the clean lines of my revenge. Brian going to jail felt necessary, but not triumphant. Thanks, Linda. Send me your final invoice. Already in your email. It's been a pleasure working with you. She paused. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. Not the easy thing, but the right thing. After we hung up, I sat in my living room. My actual living room, not theirs anymore, and looked at the space. I'd replaced their debt finance furniture with pieces from my own storage. My old leather sofa, worn but comfortable. The oak coffee table I'd built in 1997. Everything familiar, everything mine. The house felt like home again. Finally. 2 days later, Jennifer knocked on my door. She stood on the porch soaked from the rain, no umbrella, looking like she'd walked the entire way from their studio in East Portland. Behind her, to my surprise, stood Brian. He looked diminished, thinner, gray-faced, wearing a cheap raincoat that did nothing to keep him dry. Can we come in? Jennifer asked. Please, just for a few minutes. I considered saying no. Would have been within my rights. But curiosity won again, just like at the coffee shop. They sat on my old sofa, dripping on the hardwood floors I'd refinished myself. Neither spoke immediately. Brian stared at his hands. Jennifer twisted a soggy tissue. Brian has something to say, Jennifer finally said. We both do. That's why we're here. Brian looked up. His eyes were different, haunted, defeated. I'm going to jail in 12 days, 18 months. Before I go, I needed to... He stopped, swallowed hard. I needed to apologize. Really apologize. Not the tactical kind where I'm trying to get something. Go on. I manipulated Jennifer. Pushed her to see you as a resource instead of her father. I was drowning in debt from my failed businesses, and instead of admitting I'd screwed up, I looked for someone to save me. His voice cracked. You were convenient, successful, alone. I saw an opportunity, and I took it. You saw a mark? I corrected. Yes. He didn't flinch. I saw a mark. I convinced Jennifer you needed us, when really we needed you. I pushed for the refinancing scheme. I forged your signature. Jennifer didn't know until afterward, but she didn't report it either. We're both guilty. Different degrees, but both guilty. Jennifer spoke quietly. I made the phone call. That's on me. When you were in the ICU, dying for all I knew, I was worried about Brian's birthday party. Tears ran down her face, mixing with rainwater. What kind of person does that? What kind of daughter? The kind who lost their way? I said. Not kindly, but factually. I found out about the forgery the day after you came home from the hospital, she continued. Brian told me what he'd done, said it was too late to back out. I could have called the police then, reported it, protected you. Instead, I chose him over you. She looked at me directly. That was my decision. My betrayal. I own it. The room settled into heavy silence. Rain drummed against the windows. Somewhere down the street, a car passed, headlights sweeping across the walls. Why now? I asked. Why come here and tell me this? Because you deserve to hear it, Brian said. Because I'm going to prison and might not get another chance. Because Jennifer's filing for divorce and starting over, and she needs to face you before she can move forward. He stood slowly. I don't expect forgiveness. Don't deserve it. But you deserve the truth, spoken clearly, without excuses. Anything else? Just... He hesitated. Thank you. For not pressing for the maximum sentence. For giving me probation first. I wasted that chance, but you gave it. That's more than I deserved. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. For what it's worth, the newspaper articles Jennifer found about your career, I read them all. You really were someone important, someone who mattered, and I treated you like garbage. That's going to haunt me in that cell. After he left, Jennifer remained on the sofa. We sat in silence for several minutes. I meant what I said at the coffee shop, she finally said. I don't expect anything from you. Not forgiveness, not a relationship, nothing. I just wanted you to hear it from both of us. The full acknowledgement of what we did. What happens after Brian goes to jail? I keep working, keep trying to pay down the restitution. I'm waitressing 3 nights a week now on top of my marketing job, sleeping 5 hours a night, sending every extra dollar toward what we owe you. She pulled out a crumpled envelope. This is the first payment, $200. It's not much, but it's honest. I earned it. I'm giving it. No strings attached. I took the envelope. The bills inside were worn, clearly hard-earned. Keep it. What? Keep it? Pay your own rent. Feed yourself. I set the envelope on the coffee table between us. Here's what's going to happen, Jennifer. You're going to pay the court-ordered restitution over the next 3 years. Not to me. To the system. That's justice, and it's non-negotiable. But I'm not going to grind you into dust over it. Dad, I'm not done. I leaned forward. You're going to rebuild your life. Really rebuild it. Not fake it with credit cards and borrowed money. You're going to figure out who you are without Brian, without my money, without anyone's safety net. You're going to become someone your 22-year-old self would recognize. And then maybe we try being father and daughter again. Not now, not next month, maybe not next year. But eventually, if you prove you've actually changed. I pulled out a business card, my own, from my consulting days. This is my email. Once a month, if you want, you can send me an update. How you're doing, what you're learning, who you're becoming. I'll read them. I might not respond, but I'll read them. She stared at the card like it was a lifeline. That's more than I deserve. Probably. But I spent 35 years believing in second chances, in redemption, in people's capacity to change. I'm not going to stop now. I stood, moved toward the door. But understand, this isn't forgiveness. Not yet. This is a chance to earn it. If you waste it, there won't be another. Jennifer stood, tucked the card carefully into her pocket. I won't waste it. We'll see. At the door, she turned back. The bookshelf in your workshop, the oak one with the dovetails. That's beautiful work. You saw it? When we were packing. I noticed it then, realized you'd stopped working on it after we moved in. She managed a small, sad smile. I hope you finish it. You deserve to finish things you started. After she left, I stood on the porch watching the rain. Betsy Morrison waved from her window across the street. Clarence's light was on next door, probably grading papers or reading case law. The neighborhood continuing its quiet existence, anchored by people who'd been here decades, who knew each other's histories and flaws and still chose to stay. My phone buzzed, a text from Jennifer. Thank you for the chance. I'll try to deserve it. Jay, I didn't respond. Not yet. Let her sit with uncertainty for a while. Let her work for it. Inside, I returned to my workshop. The bookshelf waited, nearly complete now. Just the final sanding and finishing left. I ran my hand along the dovetails, feeling where my chisel had cut clean lines 3 years ago. Time to finish what I started. The wood grain caught the light as I worked, showing patterns laid down over decades of growth. Oak was like that, strong, enduring, showing its age honestly. You couldn't hide oak's history, couldn't pretend the hard years hadn't happened. But those hard years made it stronger, more beautiful, more worth preserving. I thought about Jennifer's monthly emails, wondered if I'd read them with softness or skepticism, wondered if she'd actually follow through or fade away like her past commitments, wondered if 18 months from now, when Brian got out, they'd both be different people or just older versions of the same. Didn't know, couldn't know. That was the thing about second chances. They required faith in an uncertain outcome, but I'd built a career on faith. Faith that historic buildings could be saved. Faith that neighborhoods could be preserved. Faith that people, given the right incentives and consequences, could choose better paths. Sometimes that faith was rewarded. Sometimes it wasn't. Either way, I'd done what I set out to do. Protected what was mine. Enforced consequences. Stood my ground. The house was mine again. My life was mine again. The people who'd taken advantage had learned, painfully, expensively, that actions have weight. Justice wasn't always satisfying, but it was fair, and fair was enough. I applied the first coat of finish to the bookshelf, watching the oil soak into the wood, bringing out the grain's full beauty. Outside, the October rain continued. Inside, my house settled around me with its familiar sounds. Home. Finally, completely home. The phone buzzed again. Clarence. Dinner tomorrow? I'll bring the steaks. You're on, I typed back. And bring your good whiskey. Life moving forward. Not perfect, not healed, but moving. That was enough. That was everything. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.